Hey, I'm Lexi, and this is what you should know. How are you all going? I hope you are all doing well and staying safe. I have had, honestly, a wild week. I threw my back out while trying to pat the podcast cat Palpatine, and I had my one day in the office, which the trip in was honestly quite unsettling. So to get to work, because I live on the other side of town to my office, I have to go along the expressway and then down a main arterial road. As there is a lot of people on those roads, it is not uncommon for a car to be going the same way for a long period of time. So I'm not just going to say a car was following me, because a lot of people have to travel the same way. But this one motherfucker that was driving my way was being extra creepy. As I was coming up on him in traffic and slowing down for the speed change, I noticed he had a handheld camera pointed out his open window and pointed back to see the cars coming up behind him. He then panned the camera to follow me, and as I ended up driving beside him for a while, he had the camera pointed directly into my car. Thankfully, it is winter, and I shelled out extra for the tinted windows. So I am unsure if he could see into my car, but he recorded pointing the camera directly straight at me for a solid 2 minutes. And me being the kind of paranoid arsehole who is elbow deep into true crime on the reg, decided to take in what I could about him. Dude was white, wearing a gold watch and a blue, possibly tie-dye hoodie with dark hair. I also got his license plate as he started driving around me like a straight-up dickhead. Today, the day of recording, I finally called the non-emergency police line to confirm that it was not a cop car. Because as I'm trying to deal with the fact of how creepy that was, I'm also trying to give myself reasons not to be creeped out. And one of the main reasons I doubt it would have been a cop car is, believe it or not, holding a camcorder out the window while actively driving is illegal. The agent on the line told me it was not a police car, confirmed the type of car I saw, and told me that I really should go into my local police station to make a report, just in case this is an actual ongoing issue. So that is what I will be doing later today. But the fact I had a professional on the line tell me I was not crazy and that is indeed creepy has really got me extra creeped out. Moral of the story, if you can, get details and take it to the police when possible. That being said, that is enough about me and my creepy goings-ons. Let's jump back in time. The year is 1973. Songs like Tie a Yellow Ribbon Round the Old Oak Tree by Tony Orlando and Dawn, and Crocodile Rock by Elton John graced the charts. Movies like American Graffiti and Last Tango in Paris were showing on the silver screens. Fun facts aside, it was the second time true parental terror gripped South Australia when 2 girls vanished without a trace. And this is what you should know about the disappearance of Joanne Ratcliffe and Kriste Gordon. It was Saturday, the 25th of August, 1973. Winter was coming to an end, and the spring weather was starting to break through the cold and wet. This also meant that footy season was almost over. This was the time before sleek athletes sporting six-packs while living and breathing the sport came to be. And instead, we were watching the pinnacle of the 70s Australian man. Names like Barry Hurl and Bob Hammond, mullets and moustaches, with what we would now call a dad bod. That day, North Adelaide won against Norwood by 14 points, and the Oval was packed with footy fans. Joanne Ratcliffe was at that match with her parents, and Kriste Gordon was there with her grandmother. The family both had season tickets for the football, and had sat next to each other in the same seats every week. For those like me who do not know much about football, the season starts at the beginning of April and concludes in the end of September. So at this point, in 1973, it was the 20th round. So these two families had gotten to know each other, and this is why Kriste's grandmother allowed Joanne to take her to the toilet instead of taking her herself. 11-year-old Joanne Ratcliffe was considered to be kind, well-mannered, and a responsible young girl. Due to this, the adults there trusted her to take 4-year-old Kriste Gordon to the toilets. However, she was no match for a full-grown man who snatched her and Kriste in broad daylight at the crowded Adelaide Oval. The two families began to worry after the girls had failed to return after 15 minutes, and a discussion began where they decided that each family member would search an area of the football stadium for them, with Kriste's grandmother remaining at the seats in case the girls returned there. But they would all return without the girls, and Kathleen Ratcliffe, Joanne's mother, would get an announcement made over the Oval's PA system shortly after the game ended, around 5 p.m. 12 minutes later, the girls were reported missing to the police. The last sighting was 90 minutes after they were seen 3 kilometers away with a man, and they looked distressed. Joanne Ratcliffe nor Kriste Gordon were ever seen again. The man, who was wearing a sports coat and an Akubra-style hat, had picked up the younger of the girls in his right arm and walked towards the Oval's southern gate. The older girl grabbed him and kicked his shins, and a pair of eyeglasses dropped from his pocket. He bent down to pick them up, and then grabbed the arm of the older girl, dragging them towards the car park area and out of sight. One witness figured he'd just seen a father wrangling his tantruming children, a sight that isn't all too uncommon. He thought little of it until he saw the news that night. The description of the man was echoed by a number of other people at the match that day, as well as a motorist who allegedly saw the trio some 3 kilometers away. Later that week, a 33-year-old man named Robert McMahon approached the Sunday Mail during the week and told them he saw the girls at a Vine Street boarding house on the day they were abducted from the footy match. He told them that the girls were with a man known as Scotty, with whom he'd shared a boarding house. He allegedly told them that he had asked Scotty about it and was told that the girls were his grandchildren, paraded the pair in front of his housemates before taking them outside and ordering them into a cream-white van parked in a laneway at the back of the boarding house. Robert had said he was so disturbed by what he saw that he drew pictures that night of what he claims he saw and wrote a letter detailing what happened on the property on the 25th of August, 1973. The artist said he kept the sketches and a letter in a box before placing them in a sealed envelope. In August of 2013, he opened the envelope in front of the Sunday Mail, producing the sketches that really do look to be an accurate portrayal of Joanne, who was 11, and Kriste, who was 4. There were also drawings of Scotty and a cream-white van, along with 2 scribbled notes. When asked further about the incident with Scotty, Robert said the following: "I heard a racket. I went to check, and there was one of the boarders coming in, and he had 2 children with him. He had the little one under his right arm, and the other one was ahead of him. He walked them around in a circle in front of us, 4 or 5 men, laughing and joking. He said the kids were his grandchildren, but when the older one went to speak, he told her to shut up and not say anything. I can still see the taller girl now as she walked past me. It was really very weird. And I have to agree with him. It is not the way you would treat your grandchildren." Robert figured it would be a while before anyone got back to him, as the police had hundreds of sightings. However, he claimed they never did. He even claimed that he rang the police again a week later, and then again around the first anniversary of the abductions, with the same result. He said he didn't pursue it any further out of frustration, and I can't entirely fault him for it. He had reached out as much as he could while living his life, and unfortunately, it is still a common issue even today. The question for that is whether or not the police are underfunded or have resources in the wrong places. Unfortunately, I am unsure any version of the government is ever going to be willing to deeply evaluate this issue. So let's not get up on a soapbox here. Robert said Scotty did not return to the boarding house, and he never saw him again. Unfortunately, finding him wouldn't be easy either, as it turned out that Scotty was not his real name. He was described as being in his early 40s with a broad Scottish accent. He said he had been about 165 centimeters tall, had grey receding hair, and limped on his right side. Former Adelaide Oval assistant curator Ken Walling reportedly saw the back of a man walking with the two girls and noticed that he had a stoop, which really points out that Scotty very may well have been the abductor. But that is where the information on Scotty dries up. Many more came to light. With all the called-in tips, the police created a sketch of the man described by the many witnesses. What was captured in the black ink looked very much like the one sketched just 7 years earlier in the disappearance of the Beaumont children, Australia's most infamous disappearance case. Many of the suspects in the Beaumont case, unsurprisingly, are also suspects in this case, including child killers Bevan Spencer von Einman and Derek Percy. Bevan is well known for what is called the family murders within Adelaide. However, Joanne and Kriste did not fit his usual target type, his usual type being young boys. He is a convicted child murderer and suspected serial killer. He was convicted in 1984 for the murder of 15-year-old Adelaide teenager Richard Kelvin, the son of local television and radio personality Rob Kelvin. Honestly, the amount to unpack surrounding that case alone is so in-depth that I will have to save it for a separate episode, as it really is quite the rabbit hole to dive down. Derek Percy was an Australian suspected serial killer and convicted child killer who was also a person of interest linked to the mysterious deaths and disappearances of missing children in the 60s and 70s, including the Beaumont disappearances and the Wonder Beach murders. However, he was only ever convicted of the murder of 12-year-old Von Tui at Ski Beach, Western Port Bay, on the 27th of July, 1969. Much like Bevan and some of the other men listed, he really does deserve his own episode. However, I really do wonder how men like him managed to get away with these crimes for so long. It really does highlight how unsafe and how naive people were during the 70s. Arthur Stanley Brown is still considered to be the most likely suspect for the Beaumont abduction, as he bore a striking similarity to the identikit picture of the suspect for both Beaumont and Adelaide Oval cases. One of the worst things about this suspect is he was also charged for the 1970 rape and murder of Judith and Susan McKay in Townsville, Queensland. The jury failed to reach a verdict, and a new trial was blocked on the grounds that he was too senile to be tried again. His arrest attracted wide publicity, leading a witness to the 1973 Adelaide Oval abductions to identifying him as the suspect she had seen 25 years earlier. Arthur was another scary man that should not have been allowed to be free from prison. He was also suspected of the alleged murder of 14-year-old Marilyn Joy Wallman in 1972 and 18-year-old Catherine Pamela Graham, who was murdered in 1975. In 2002, Arthur took his secrets with him to the grave, dying at the age of 90, alone and ostracized by his family, but legally an innocent man. Another possible suspect is Stanley Arthur Hart, who was named by his grandson, convicted pedophile Mark Trevor Marshall. A letter written by Mark, which was sent to the Adelaide Advertiser before being handed over to the police, stated that his grandfather had taken the girls and that Mark had been present as a very young boy. Two properties previously owned by Stanley in Prospect and Yatina were investigated in 2009 and in 2015. Authorities were allegedly told that Kriste and Joanne were raped and ultimately murdered at the Yatina property. However, during those excavations, including in a bomb shelter in the Prospect property, nothing was found. Stanley also rarely missed a North Adelaide match and was likely at the game. It was a decade after the abduction that he was found to be a child abuser, which does link into the story that was told by Mark. 14 months after the two girls went missing, Susie Ratcliffe was born. When she was 4, she recalls her mum sitting her down and telling her why she'd never be able to play with her big sister, Joanne. Kathleen and Les tried their best to hide their sadness from Susie and David, but the pain clearly would never fade. As she grew older, she became more and more interested in the details behind her sister's disappearance. And in 2006, when she became a mother, she says, It was then that she resolved to help long-suffering families going through the same ordeal. As you can imagine, while connecting with those with missing relatives, she learned their greatest fear was that their loved ones would be forgotten as time passed. In a 2020 interview, Susie was quoted as saying, "The police searches stop, there's no new leads, the media attention fades away, and then so does the person. I couldn't let that happen." It was with that her charity, Leave a Light On Inc. was born. Leave a Light On has a goal to raise awareness of missing persons cold cases in Australia. By working alongside other missing persons organisations, they hope to promote long-term cases and raise awareness of the need for ongoing support for families and friends dealing with the ambiguous loss of a missing person. In a 2013 article, Susie appealed to the authorities to look into the role a family friend, simply known as Frank, may have played in the part of the disappearance of the girls. Frank had accompanied the families to the Oval on the day of the girls' abduction, but may not have been formally questioned by police. Frank is alleged to have intimate knowledge about the girls' routine and behaviours during the football outings. Kathleen said that Frank had left his seat for approximately 30 minutes before the girls' disappearance, but later, when they went missing, remained seated and did not participate in the search parties. Kriste's grandmother also noticed Frank's behaviour during the search for the girls, saying, "The other man stayed in his seat." In a bizarre coincidence, because the rule of 6 degrees of separation is more like 4 in Adelaide, Frank later sold his home to the mother of convicted murderer Bevan Spencer von Einman. However, during a 3-day inquest in 1979, Frank was only mentioned once. And that was when Joanne's father Les said, "This witness, Your Honour, can state that we always had a rule in our family. No children were to go to the toilet at quarter time, half time, 3/4 time. They could go halfway through the 3rd quarter and were not to go in the last quarter whatsoever." I can only speculate that this is due to how busy it would have been at that time, making it hard to keep an eye on these children. But nothing further came from it with Frank. But that would not stop Susie on her mission to gain closure on what happened to her sister Joanne. In 2018, Susie called for all evidence in long-term missing children's cases to be urgently retested for DNA, and said police are potentially sitting on a gold mine of DNA evidence that could resolve countless cold cases. I have to say, she is very likely correct, but with the scum of the earth piling up more crimes, it is both too expensive and too busy for this to be completed, which just honestly breaks my heart. Susie was quoted as saying in an interview, "It is paramount that everything that has been collected in the cases of these long-term missing children is retested for DNA. With all the advances in DNA technology, it is very possible that retesting will provide answers that families like mine have been waiting for years. These are families who have been living in a state of anguish and grief for decades, wondering every single day what happened to their loved ones. With the missing, there is no such thing as closure. It never ends, and it doesn't get easier. After 5, 15, or 50 years, the grief and frustration is still there, and the pain never ceases. But Susie is not alone, as Dr. Jody Ward has stated that there is more than 500 sets of unidentified human remains archived across the country and around 2,000 long-term missing people. In an article for The Conversation, Dr. Ward wrote, "It's time Australia committed a laboratory solely dedicated to missing persons casework. Current capability in DNA forensics could allow us to match up remains with some of these missing persons cases and potentially give families relief. A unit dedicated to that could very well bring closure to many families, allowing them to know what happened to their loved ones. It likely just lacks the government funding. And why not put money towards that? The New South Wales Health Pathology Forensic DNA Specialists has been working with the Australian Army's Unrecovered War Casualties Unit to identify remains of soldiers dating back to World War I. Dr. Ward and her team have been able to extract DNA from bone fragments and apply world-leading technologies to obtain DNA profiles. With this technology, it means that the age and condition of human remains is no longer the obstacle it once was, and Dr. Ward is keen to apply it to the nameless, faceless bones of civilian men, women, and children gathering dust in evidence rooms. If we have this technology, then steps need to be taken to identify the unidentified remains and work on providing closures on those cold cases. As time has passed, much like in many other cold cases, the immediate family of Joanne and Kriste have passed away. Susie has lost both her parents and older brother. When Kathleen Ratcliffe passed away, Susie posted a heartwarming tribute to her mother, saying, "I know she is now at peace, free from her pain and suffering, the answers she has longed for finally in reach." And that is frustratingly where the case stands today. With no real answers, I honestly cannot even begin to imagine what Kathleen and Les Radcliffe felt at the loss of their eldest daughter without any answers, or how it feels for Kriste Gordon's family, losing her at such a young age. The pain would never end, and honestly, I wish no one would ever have to feel that pain again. If you want information on Leave a Light On Inc., I have linked their Facebook in the show notes. They ask households and businesses to leave their front light on in memory for long-term missing persons and have asked them to share them on October the 21st, connecting on Instagram and Facebook using the hashtags Leave a Light On, Bring Them Home, and Missing Persons. If you feel so inclined, even with October being so far away, please feel free to do so. Let us not forget those who have vanished without a trace. And on that cold feeling, that is all I have for you this week. If you have any information that could be helpful in this case, or in any case, really, please contact Crime Stoppers on 1-800-333-000 and notify them. Heck, even if you have a grandparent with dementia and they confess it to you, it is worth bringing it up, so it can be verified. Either you could solve a case or you could gain better help for an older family member. I will be posting pictures from this case on Facebook and Instagram at What You Should Know Australia. Email is whatyoushouldknowaustralia@gmail.com if you want to reach out. If you have a chance, please give me a nice review. Believe it or not, seeing those really do make my day. But until next week, stay safe and stay hydrated. Bye!